Now, first, though, the government's crackdown on crime continues at pace. There's been an almost daily drip of policy announcement hooked up to the nation's arm via news media. New offences for coward punchers, changes to how shoplifters are charged, and harsher sentencing laws for those who assault first responders. Now, last night, panellist Steve McCabe labelled it nothing more than a Tory diversion tactic.
Typical Tory tactic in a case like this is to deflect attention away from the fact that we have massive poverty by going, let's get tough on crime, because it feels good to be viscerally angry and then punish people who can't do anything.
And in reply, Newmarket Business Association head Mark Knopf-Thomas had this to say.
I just think that this hand-wringing, this excruciating hand-wringing because there's, let's not do anything to hurt people, it's absolute rubbish. And what we have now is a government in place that has listened to the excruciating years of targeted retail crime, which went unfettered and unstopped by any other previous government.
So classic right-wing dog whistle policies or solid, impactful justice reforms, and I see that that's been going on today. The politics of the crime crackdown. Shall we start with you, Lyric? What's your take on this?
Well, obviously the National Party's quite focused on being tough on crime, so it works for them. I think something like the coward's punch laws, that's quite agreeable. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who would think that a coward's punch shouldn't be, punished quite severely, especially if it leads to a death. Something like the shoplifting, the changes to fines, perhaps a bit more controversial because you sort of think, well, why do people shoplift? It's why does someone throw a coward punch? Because it's a coward punch, but shoplifting, sort of feels a bit more nuanced. And you just sort of hope that while they, tackle things head on, they also tackle the causes of crime.
And it's been the shoplifting that's got the attention, isn't it? That $1,000 ticket there, Paddy Gower.
Yeah, to be honest, I think these are good politics. The coward punch, people really understand it. And you look at it and you go, well, why didn't somebody do this years ago? It's one of those things that people get. I think the attacks on first responders, why haven't we had that in for ages? If someone comes in and attacks a nurse in the ED or something like that, these are pretty good in terms of retail politics. They are what they are. National is gonna national when it comes to law and order, and they've done it quite well. Shoplifting again, you see the people in the shops come out and support it, and another one, it was announced earlier, but the gang patches ban, that is something that, I'll admit, personally I looked at that and thought that is not going to work, but I see a hell of a lot less patches around these days as well. And again, it's these things that people understand. Whether they make a difference to the number of crimes, is anybody's guess.
Okay, so good retail politics. Got a bit of a tick there from Paddy Gower. Holly. So, look, you represent Diane Hunt, whose son, Constable Matthew Hunt, was killed during a traffic stop, right? Yep. Do New Zealand's sentencing laws need to be changed? Is the coalition government doing that?
So I've advocated for that for quite some time on behalf of Diane, and that is ultimately her kaupapa just after the tragic events that happened. I do think it's reasonable to consider whether or not first responders are well looked after. I don't think that they have been, and the government's extended that to prison officers as well, because I saw one of the statements saying that in times of emergency, our first responders run towards danger rather than away. And I think that in and of itself is a very important thing to acknowledge, because they don't have to be there. They don't have to be doing it. And I most certainly am not putting myself in that line of fire. No,
it is something that quite resonated, Lyric. But some are saying also, okay, then why don't we extend that to, say, the nurses and the doctors and those long late nights in Middlemore, Lyric?
I'd like to see it extended to the nurses and doctors, yes, but over to Lyric.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
They got a little excited being on the panel.
I love it. Yeah. Love the synergy. How dare you talk over women? No, just kidding. Nurses get a really hard stick of it, and as do doctors. If you've ever spent a night in the hospital, sometimes you hear just people screaming at them and you couldn't even imagine putting yourself through that. It's not a job that a lot of people want, and you should feel safe to do your job. I feel like we really recognised that during COVID as well, and it kind of seems like perhaps those aggressions maybe haven't really died down. Maybe
No.
we've become a bit more mean, perhaps.
Oh, totally.